Today on the Diz List, we discuss with our friend Ear Scouts Rob what Disneyland Paris and Disney World do best.
Welcome to the Diz List, the podcast that ranks everything in Walt Disney World. I'm Nick.
And I'm Rob, and welcome to episode 74, where we discuss with our friend Ear Scouts Rob what Disneyland Paris and Disney World do best. That might be our longest intro that we've done.
It could be. I'm really excited. It's been a long time in the making to finally get back to being able to, do another show with our good friend Rob from Ear Scouts. So if you don't know Rob from Ear Scouts, Rob's YouTube channel, Ear Scouts, is one of the best go-tos for anything having to do with Genie Plus, but recently has been doing a lot of stuff about the parties, any kind of park strategy stuff. If you're looking for park strategy stuff, you've got to go look for Ear Scouts. So Rob, welcome to the show again.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for that awesome introduction. I appreciate that.
I am really excited too because you just launched your new website, and I love the forum format and how people can go in and answer questions and help each other out. It's a great family type thing.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we're really excited about it, mainly because people would ask questions a lot on YouTube, but the challenge of that is I always try to keep up with the comments that come in like on the day that a video is posted, but we actually end up getting questions on videos that were posted, months ago or even, over a year ago. And the problem is sometimes I don't see it, but also other people don't see it and learn from it. So we were really excited to have the forum so that people come and ask questions there. Well, number one, they might find the answer to their question eventually once we start building up those answers there. But to just kind of make it more of a community and to have everyone kind of help each other out for their Disney trip.
And I mentioned a little bit that you have been doing some park strategy stuff and also some of the parties. We've heard a lot about the Jollywood Nights and some of the stuff going on with Jollywood Nights and how it wasn't received quite as well. And you were at the first night, correct?
I was actually. I don't know if you guys can tell. I'm a little under the weather. I actually got. It was a rainy Jollywood night and a little bit of a stressful Jollywood night. I think I maybe picked up something, but it was. Honestly, here's the thing. I think that once Disney works out some of the bugs, which they know what the bugs are. It was pretty clear to everybody who was there. I think they're going to fix those things. And I think as long as people go into it knowing it's kind of not going to probably be like Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party where you can realistically do most everything. You can't meet all the characters, but you can do most of the major stuff. With this one, I feel like it would be very challenging to do everything in one night. So I think it's important that people kind of go in picking the things they care the most about. And I think if they do that, they can have a really good time at this party. But yeah, the first night was a little rough.
Now, I haven't watched any of that yet at all, Rob. I haven't gone in and seen that. I watched your video on the Magic Kingdom Christmas party. That's called Mary? What's the name of that one?
The Very Merry Christmas Party, Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party.
And that looked fantastic. I really enjoyed watching that. Looks like the treats were good. Looks like you had a lot of fun. I mean, it was a long wait for Jack and Sally, but probably worth it. And their costumes were incredible. I thought that was amazing. But I guess my point is Nick has watched a lot about it. I don't know a ton about what even happened. Could you give like a quick recap of what Jollywood Nights was like?
Sure. So the thing that happened, honestly, was I think Disney did not anticipate as many people being interested in coming to the park before the party started. So normally most people enter the party from outside. So they had everybody ready to welcome guests and give them their credential and their, wristband outside. But because that party starts so late, you can't get in until 7. A ton of people were like, oh, I'm just going to go into the park during the day. And they only had one wristband distribution point inside.
Oh, okay.
So folks ended up waiting in line for close to an hour to get their wristband. So that was number one. The other really big snafu was they kind of had this hot ticket of the night where you could get on a reservation to go to the Brown Derby for a special party that was there. And something went wrong with their reservation system, and it told everybody that they had a table that they were going to get in 5 minutes.
Oh no.
And so like everybody was just hanging out outside the Brown Derby waiting for their 5 minute table. For the record, we got called for our table about an hour and a half after we were told a 5 minute wait. And that kind of, I mean, people didn't want to leave because they're like, oh, I don't want to miss out on my table, And so there was a lot of that kind of stuff that just, made it challenging for folks and that was kind of how people started their night. And that kind of, I think, set things off on the wrong foot for a lot of people.
Sounds like a rough start.
But the shows were good and really interesting. And Nick and I were talking a minute ago. What's really cool is to see Disney they were gearing this party towards adults. They were not really marketing this as a kids party. They wanted this to be more for the parents. And I think that they succeeded. I mean, the Nightmare Before Christmas show kind of felt like something you'd go see at like a black box theater in like, downtown. I mean, it did not feel like a Disney stage show. And then, the Muppet show that was kind of like a stage spectacular, that felt more like a traditional Disney stage show, but it was just the production quality was top notch. It felt like an adult version of a Disney stage show. And I think there's a lot great about this event. And it's just unfortunate that, folks maybe didn't get to experience all of it because of the snafus.
That's too bad. Well, it sounds like this is things they can iron out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also heard that, like, for instance, the Brown Derby thing, it really wasn't everything that was kind of promised to be or something. I'd heard some stuff about how there was an impression that they were going to be playing Christmas tunes and stuff like holiday tunes and stuff like that, and that it really wasn't that. I'm not sure if that's true or not. You were there. You can probably.
So when I was there, they were playing. There was live music playing. There was a live piano player, and he was singing Christmas music. There was not a lot of theming inside, though. There was just kind of around the guy playing music. There was some garland, and that was about it. Otherwise, it was just like I'm at the Brown Derby, and there's live music. But
they just sprinkled some tinsel in his hair.
Exactly. It was a quick sprinkling of some Christmas decor, and we're calling it done. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie though. I really loved that part of the night once we got in there because it was very there weren't a lot of folks in there. It seemed they were having a hard time keeping the place full. And so it was kind of a respite from the craziness everywhere else. I mean, the weather wasn't ideal. So you were like nice and cozy and warm, and there was live music and good food and drinks. And, I had a good time there. But if you were expecting it to be a lot different than a visit to the Brown Derby during the park day, I would say it wasn't, other than the live music.
That's a shame because it could have been really, it could have been something more special. But I'm glad that at least, like you say, it was warm, it was dry, good food, and good company and stuff. So obviously that's a bonus there. Did they do any special holiday overlays
for rides?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Okay.
To be honest, we didn't do any of the rides. That was also part of the problem. I think they were expecting more people to go and ride rides. And at least that first night, everybody just wanted, it was a brand new party. Everybody just wanted to experience the party stuff. And hardly anybody was riding the ride. So they didn't advertise that there was an overlay of any kind. I don't think there was. But if you wanted to ride anything in that park, you could pretty much walk onto it. So that was, if you were there to ride rides, that would have been probably good for you.
I'm trying to think of what could be a holiday overlay. I mean, really anything with projectors they could.
Yeah. In Galaxy's Edge, they could do something with the horrible Star Wars holiday movie from back in the day.
Oh my gosh.
Life Day?
Yes.
A Life Day celebration?
Wow. Impressive.
Yeah.
Or they, just bring in and make it look like Hoth.
You can, in fact, purchase a Life Day spork at this very moment in Galaxy's Edge if you wanted.
Oh wow.
It's
It
weird that they're
exists.
leaning into this because this is something that George Lucas wanted nothing to do with. And
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it on YouTube, and I've watched it. It's torturous, but
Yeah.
it's funny to just bring it up every year. My son will go, "Hey, how about the Star Wars Christmas special?" And we'll fast forward through the highlights or lowlights depending on how you
Yeah.
want to rate it.
So we're gonna get headed to the halftime show here, and then when we come back, we're gonna hear your take on what 5 things Disneyland Paris does better versus what 5 things Disney World does better. So I'm really excited for that. This week, we're just gonna say all of our patrons brought the halftime show, of which Rob, you're one of them. So thank you so much for your support, but thank you to all of the patrons. So thank you very much. Welcome back. Today on the Diz List, we're going to talk about what Disney World does better and what Disneyland Paris does better with our good friend Rob from Ear Scouts. Rob, I think this is like a dream trip for both our Rob, Diz List Rob, and me.
Yep.
I know I really want to go there. And after watching your videos on it, and after doing a ton of research last night, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this.
Yeah, I'm using this as my sales pitch to my wife. I mean, she's already in. I mean,
Yeah.
my wife loves Disney too. I mean, obviously our whole family does, but I'm like, okay, so Rob's video came out, and Eric, and we have to sit down and watch it. And like, I had to make a special time for us to sit down and watch. And then I watched it a few more times just because it's great. And a lot of times, honestly, Rob, I feel like I feel like I'm at the park with you sometimes. I'm just like, you'll talk to me and I'll talk back to the TV. Rob, that looks great. So even though we can't be in Orlando, a lot of times I love watching your videos so much. And listeners, if you haven't, and I know Nick said it before, but if you haven't checked out the Ear Scouts site or the Ear Scouts on YouTube and the website, both, please, please, please do. Okay. Even pause our show. I'm allow that right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Pause the show.
No. Finish the podcast. Enjoy the podcast. The videos will still be there.
We love it. We love it.
The last time we did a list with you was a bucket list. Now, I know this isn't technically part of your bucket list because your bucket list was seeing snow in the park and
Yeah.
real snow. But
Yeah.
you got to admit, this was about as close as you're going to get to that, right?
Well, we as soon as we got back, we had really high expectations for Paris, and I got to say it exceeded our highest expectations, and we were
Okay.
just we were immediately like, okay, how do we go back? How can we figure out how to go back? So we're the tentative plan is when the Frozen Land reopens, we didn't get to see the Disneyland Paris hotel because it was being
okay.
refurbished while we were there. We could only see the outside of it, but just looking at the outside of it, we were just like, we got to come back for this alone. So we're planning tentatively, not next year, but the year after, to probably go back for my birthday, which is in February. So it's possible we could see some snow at
Cool.
Disneyland Paris, and
That is
yeah,
awesome.
we're gonna try to stay at the Disneyland Paris hotel. So
Awesome.
hopefully that'll still happen.
Are you ready to jump right in with your number 5?
Sure. So I basically did a number 5, 1 through 5 for what I think Disneyland Paris does better and what I think Disney World does better. But my number 5 for what Disneyland Paris does better is their anniversary celebration. So we were there during the 30th anniversary of Disneyland Paris. And of course, we were here. We actually launched our channel at the beginning of the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. So we kind of got a front row seat for both of them. And I got to say, Disneyland Paris, man, they know how to do an anniversary celebration. It was,
wow.
The music was so, do yourself a favor, go and Google the song Un Monde qui s'illumine is the name of the song, but it's their like theme song we play it in the car all the time. Like we rock out to it. We love it. But also you'll see it in the videos, the kinetic sculptures that they
those are amazing.
They were cool. They were very cool.
They're incredible. And I love our golden statues. When those came, I was like, oh, this is wonderful. And I love, interacting with them with your magic band. But these kinetic sculptures were just next level. And
I agree.
we also had these like cavalcades at Disney World for the 50th. They were just kind of like little mini parades, and for their 50th, I think they may have still called it a cavalcade, but that thing just parked in front of the castle and just became a full-on stage show. It was just everything was just next level and really great. So I felt like the anniversary celebration, they really knocked it out of the park.
Now you said the sculptures your guess was that they were going to stick around. I don't see a problem with that. I feel like some of the sculptures in Disney World have kind of stayed around. They took some of the emblems off, right?
Yeah, it would be crazy for them to get rid of them just because they were so beautiful and just such, I mean, when you watch the video, you kind of see they really just look right at home in the park. So I
Absolutely.
hope they would stay there, but
Or maybe they could be relocated to a different part of the park.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just gave a sense of like life and an artistic life to each little nook and cranny that they were in. When I was watching videos, and I then after I watched yours, I did one of those rabbit holes on YouTube and was watching a whole bunch of 30th anniversary ones, and they're really, you don't even have to necessarily be looking at them. They just add something to the area anyway. I think it's a brilliant piece of art that they put in there, and doing those things. Certainly something I think Disney World could do better. I agree.
yeah. So, but to balance it out, I think now we'll do. Can we do our number 5 thing that we
of
think
course.
Disney World does better?
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course,
So,
yeah.
so number 5 on my list for Disney World is, and this, we are a very consumer culture, so this is not surprising, merchandise.
Yeah.
I was shocked at how kind of not great the merchandise was at Disneyland Paris. We didn't really talk about it much in the videos because there wasn't a lot. The best merch they had was merch that came from our parks, honestly.
Oh, really?
It was the stuff that was made specifically for Disneyland Paris. You could kind of tell that the quality just wasn't quite as good as the stuff that was sold, in internationally in the parks. And I think that's cultural. I think
Yeah.
I think in France it's just less of a consumer culture, and so they don't put as much emphasis. I mean, there were so many rides that you got off of and you're like, hey, there's no gift shop here. Which, at Disney World, there's almost always a gift shop. So
Yep.
Or they're trying to sell you a car.
yeah, exactly. So if you're a fan, we expected to spend so much money on merchandise just because it's like, it's a once in a lifetime trip. We're going to bring so much stuff back. And we kind of didn't bring back that much, actually.
I mean, most of your money went into quiche.
Oh, man, we ate so much quiche.
I was waiting for the opportunity to bring that one up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That quiche is amazing.
I think, I do think it's probably cultural. I think you're right there. But you would think if they do celebrations so much better that you would, I guess I would have thought that they would have a lot of 30th anniversary type stuff.
And that was the other thing that was weird. So we were there was still going to be the better part of a month of the celebration left. They had put all their 30th stuff on deep clearance. I mean, we got most of it for 50% off, and much of it sold out literally as we were there. We were like, one day there was something there, and the next day, like, oh yeah, we're out of that now. It's all gone. And so, yeah, that was also another thing. It was like Disney World, they're not putting that 50th stuff on sale until like 3 or 4 months after the celebration's over. They're gonna keep going with it. So yeah, that was another big difference.
It's a great logo too, that 30th anniversary logo. That it's, if you haven't seen it before, the 3, it kind of looks like the top of Mickey's head, and the 0 makes the other ear. It's just a brilliant design.
It really is.
So that brings us to your number 4 of Paris. What Paris does better.
So now number 4 of what Paris does better, and we showed this a lot in the video. So their Main Street USA, on either side of it, behind the stores, there are what they call arcades in Paris, and they're essentially these covered. Honestly, it's kind of the forerunner to what became shopping malls, really.
Yeah.
But it dates back to, I think, 1799 was the first of these covered alleys in Paris. It's really cool because number one, you kind of have this like you almost feel like you're underground almost, you know, like you're in this kind of like old world uh, setting, but you're also protected from the elements because it as rainy as it is in Orlando, there in Paris, I think they deal with not just rainy, but rainy and cold for a lot of the
Yeah.
year. And so having the ability to have big areas that can be climate controlled becomes really important. And so they kind of latched onto this idea from Paris itself of these arcades. Now, if you're a big Disney worlder, you might know you can actually go the full length of Main Street in the Emporium. You don't have to leave the Emporium. You can get all the way to the hub. You know, you exit right there at Casey's. But this just took that idea to the next level, and they're really cool. And they're also like at the end of the night when you're trying to get through the crowds of people lining up on Main Street to see the fireworks, it is great because you have these two kind of express lanes on either side of Main Street.
I was just going to ask, is it far right and far left?
Imagine if between the Plaza restaurant and the Plaza ice cream parlor, there was like an entry into like a covered passageway.
Jeez, they could
And then
do
the
that.
same thing on the other side. So imagine
yeah,
between
yeah.
Crystal Palace and Casey's, there was another one. And the cool thing is when you're in there, there's a full storefront, on, for each store as you go down. So it's
Wow.
just like being on the other side. I mean, obviously a different view, but the other thing they added in there that was kind of cool, there are these little alleyways you can kind of go down where they have just kind of little scenes that you can see. We included one of them in the video where you can kind of see it's like you're out looking at the Statue of Liberty, and there's these kind of folks standing around from the late 1800s kind of milling about. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that was a cool part of the video. And then my initial thought is, why don't they do that in Florida?
Yeah.
It would be a very nice upgrade. I think people will be very excited about that.
Yeah, I agree.
So should I jump over to my number 4?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. What do you have for number 4?
So number 4 is hotels, because we did stay. We stayed on property at Disneyland Paris, and we stayed at kind of what would be considered a moderate resort. It was themed to Toy Story, but specifically Jessie and Woody. It was kind of a Wild West theme, but lots of Toy Story everywhere. But just in general, I feel like the rooms, weren't quite as nice. Definitely the toiletries and stuff that you get, like it felt a little bit more like what you would see at a less expensive hotel here. Now they do have deluxe hotels. We weren't able to see Disneyland Paris's the Disneyland Paris main hotel just because it was closed for renovation. But we did see the Marvel Hotel and the some of the others. We just kind of walked through, and they're nice, but I never saw anything that I felt like rose to the level of what we have at Disney World in terms of resort hotels. So
how many are there, Rob, at Disneyland Paris? I think I counted 4 so far.
There's the Santa Fe, which is kind of their budget, like value hotel.
Okay.
Really big warning to Americans staying there, though. That one does not have climate control in the rooms. And that was why we opted not for that. They don't have air conditioning. And depending on the time of year, they might have heat in there, but I don't think they had air conditioning. They definitely don't have air conditioning. And so depending on the time of year you're there, that can be a roll of the dice. Where we stayed, I'm kind of embarrassed. I can't remember the name of the hotel that we stayed in, but it was themed to Toy Story. Then there was a Sequoia Lodge, which was kind of like their version of Wilderness Lodge. And it was nice. It was very nice inside, but nothing like that grand, main area, lobby area. And then there was a Marvel hotel that sort of themed, it sort of feels like a really upscale New York hotel.
I think I remember them saying that hotel they were trying to theme it around New York and having all of the Marvel characters in there. Is that one more of a moderate or one of the
No, that's definitely a deluxe.
A deluxe?
Yeah, but it just felt like a really nice New York kind of modern fancy hotel.
Hmm.
And there were some kind of large portraits of Marvel characters and statues of Marvel characters. But it didn't feel, it felt more themed to being a very nice hotel than it did feel themed to being Marvel.
Okay.
And then the Disneyland Hotel, that is the one that I think it probably the best parallel is the Grand Floridian. But that one does seem like it probably would be even better, mainly because you actually enter Disneyland Paris you walk through the Disneyland Hotel to get into the park. So if you were staying there, you're essentially staying in Disneyland Paris. Like you walk out your door and you're in the park, which is pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Huh. That's like the Grand Californian is like that. You can walk through and get right into California Adventure.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Since we're on it, I had this written down. I was going to ask you about it, but we're on the topic. Now, kind of back to California again. Now, the amount of land that they have all in one place, is everything kind of built up around it like it is at Disneyland where there's all these hotels and things? Or is it a little bit more expansive like it is in Orlando?
It's definitely more like it is in Anaheim. The properties that they have, much like at Anaheim, where like, you know how Pixar Pier, I think is what it's called. That one is you kind of have to go down the street a little bit to get to it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they're all like, but they did build this kind of walking path that's very nice, and it kind of goes along a little river, and you can get to all of the resorts through that walking path, but it can be a very long walk to get to, especially like the Santa Fe.
Okay.
There is one other one that I forgot to mention. It's a Newport. I think it's called Newport Beach, and it kind of feels like a Yacht and Beach Club, but I would say Yacht and Beach Club were nicer.
Cool. All right. I figured I would jump in with that question now since you were kind of on the topic. I'll have you get back to your list here.
Number 4 thing that I feel like Disneyland Paris does better. Oh, I'm sorry. This is number 3. We're up to number 3 already. This is a big one, and we talk a lot about this in the video. The castle, the Sleeping Beauty Castle at Disneyland Paris. Wow. It is next level amazing. And
that's what I've heard.
Really, if you watch, there's actually I think it was in Behind the Attraction. There's an episode about the castles where they talk about like why they kind of had to go the extra mile, or they felt like they had to go the extra mile with this castle. And it's just because Europe is just filled with fairy tale castles. You know, I mean, that's where the origin of the idea of what a fairy tale castle is comes from. A lot of those European castles that are real. So I feel like Disney felt the need to really go next level with this castle, and they really, the stained glass work inside is mind-blowing. They got an actual artist who had done stained glass work for the Queen of England and other, royal palaces in Europe to come in and actually do the stained glass work. And it is incredible. But probably the coolest thing that they have, you can go into the dungeon of the castle, and there is an actual dragon
my gosh.
When you come in, he's kind of sleeping, but if you're not careful, he will wake up, and it is really cool. It is something that I definitely had castle envy while I was there.
Well, one of my favorite things is actually next to the castle that I think really they do a nice job with is those square cube shaped
Oh my
trees.
gosh. Yeah, that's amazing.
Which, comes from the art style of I guess it was Sleeping Beauty, right? That had that sort of Was it Mary Blair?
I think it's all it all links back to Mary Blair and Small World. And, yeah,
always does. All roads lead back to Mary Blair.
Their castle has a waterfall coming out of the side of it. I mean, it really is.
Gosh,
it's just incredible.
Yeah, everything I have seen with that castle just makes me realize how, as much as we think as Disney Worlders, we kind of get we're castle snobs, right? We show up to Disneyland or whatever. It's like, where's the castle? That tiny little thing. But then you see the castles overseas, and in particular, this one just looks absolutely amazing. So I agree that's certainly something that I think, even from pictures, you can tell they do better in Disneyland Paris. But that brings us to number 3 for Disney World, what they do better.
Actually, Nick, this is one that I think you probably are most familiar with out of the three of us, and it is food. Definitely, Disney World does food on the whole better than Disneyland Paris, which is surprising to me because we associate the French with being, and don't get me wrong, Paris in general, culinary capital of the world. But Disneyland Paris, I found a few things that were amazing. The quiche, I think we talked about that a little bit ago. If you're at Disneyland Paris, the quiche that you get at the Cable Car Bakery, I don't even know. Like when Eric and I tried it the first time, we were like, "What have we been eating all this time in America that we thought was quiche?" This is like, and this was not even. I think probably anyone from Paris listening to this is like, "Oh my gosh, you thought that was great quiche?" But really, if you've had is the Americanized version, it was heavenly. It was just so rich and just the texture was perfect. But anyway, so there are some good things to have there. But on the whole, I mean, the wealth of good food that we have here in Orlando at all of these different restaurants across Disney World property.
Yep, absolutely.
It's amazing. I don't know if you guys saw, I think it was Wallet Hub named Orlando their new top culinary destination in America.
Wow.
I mean, it's hard to argue. I'm not a food snob, but like if I'm going to go on vacation, I want to eat good food, and we routinely go to the really nice restaurants. I will tell you right now that 3 of the best meals I've had in my life were in Disney, and that's not because I'm sheltered and don't go to other places. The food is really good, and it doesn't shock me that we do food better than a other Disneyland resort, but I do think it's shocking, like you say, because we associate as Americans Paris with like the culinary mecca. I was shocked at first, but then when I started thinking about it, I guess I wasn't as shocked.
Yeah, I mean, Disneyland. I'm sorry, Disneyland. Disneyland also has really great food, by the way. But Disney World, I think it's you got Epcot, right, where you've got great food from all around the world. You've got all the different resorts where they many of those deluxe resorts have a signature restaurant that's just incredible. I still haven't even been to Victoria and Albert's at Grand Floridian. That's definitely on my bucket list of things to do.
Me
but
too.
By all accounts, it's one of the best restaurants in the entire world.
Right?
So
yeah, we're not talking in Florida. We're not talking in United States. We're talking the world. So I was watching a different video, not yours, but somebody had ordered a beignet, and they're like, "This isn't even a beignet. it looked like a very plain Dunkin' donut that was shaped like a Mickey with no like powdered sugar on it, no filling. It looked not good."
Yeah, the croissants. I was like, surely they're going to have amazing croissants on Main Street. No, they were kind of. I've had better croissants at Costco. Yeah, they were not great.
I heard, so I forget, this was years ago that I was watching a thing about Disneyland Paris. Someone said that the best meal they ate while they were there was at what one of the chain places that's in that little, like in their version of Disney Springs. It's one we would never go to, not like T-Rex Cafe, but like one of those Rainforest Cafe. They said that might have been their best meal they had there. That doesn't speak if that doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what does.
I will say the best meal we had was at Walt's, which is we talked about it a little bit in the video. It's basically the signature restaurant at Disneyland Paris Park, and it is really, really good, and it's a beautiful restaurant. So I don't want to say that there's not good food to be had there, but it doesn't. Yeah, It really can't compete with all the great options that we have here.
Yeah,
I did have a quick question about Walt's, Rob. Is that restaurant on the second story above on Main Street, above where the shopping is?
It is, yep. So you enter. There's actually a door that kind of goes into one of their kind of emporium style shops, and it's kind of cool. Like when you go through that door, it's themed as Lillian's Kitchen, and so it's like all kitchen goods and stuff, and so it's kind of Lillian was is Walt's wife, and so it's a very personal restaurant. You know that they really went above and beyond. They got actual artifacts from Walt's home and family pictures and stuff everywhere, and so it really does feel like you're in Walt Disney's world, which is very cool. And the other thing that we mentioned in the video, and this isn't just at Walt's, this is all over, they pretty much almost entirely source their butter and different dairy products from the Isigny region of
Oh,
France.
yeah, that's like,
And so it's incredible. Like I'd never had butter and cheese and stuff from Isigny, but now since I've been back, I've been Googling like, where can I order this Isigny butter? Because it's so good. But the reason they do that is because Walt's family was from Isigny, and that's why they were called, their family name was Disigny, which is of Isigny, and that became anglicized into Disney. So that's kind of a cool, fun backstory that you learn when you're there.
You think you know a lot about Disney and you think you know a lot of trivia, and then you come out with that one, and I never knew that.
Yeah, it was very cool eating there. So I highly recommend. And the other thing that's cool, if you eat there, you can actually buy a special pin from Walt's that you can only purchase if you eat a meal at Walt's.
Ah.
I'm very sad to say they were out when we were there, so we didn't get one. But we'll have to go back. So I guess where does that put us?
now we got to bounce back over to Paris because we just talked about food over in. We really were saying that Disney World does food better, so I guess we're back over to Paris. Is this number 1 or number 2? I lost track.
This is number 2. So my number 2 for Paris is the train, but I don't mean the Walt Disney World Railroad that goes around the park, because they do have a Walt Disney World Railroad. But when you come outside of Magic Kingdom, there's a train called the monorail that will take you to the different Disney resorts. When you come outside of Disneyland Paris, there's a train station that takes you to Paris.
What?
In 45 minutes, you can be at the Louvre from right outside the front of, in fact, it is so close to the entrance to the park that you pass the train station to get to the bus to go back to your hotel. That's how close it is. And that train station, so there's a bullet train that'll take you to the airport in about 40 minutes, or you can take the train that you can use with your essentially Metro pass, and it connects you right into the Metro of Paris. And so, you are within the city limits of Paris in 35, 40 minutes, and you can get to the heart of Paris in about 45, 50 minutes right there. And it's a lovely train.
This is blowing my mind because I did not know this.
Nick, I know what you're going to say. Nick, you're going to say the same thing as me. You're going to say, I think we just figured out exactly how our trip's going to go.
No, I'm
We'll
I'm just
stay-
thinking like, because when you say 40, 45 minutes, right? It might sound like a long time, but if you have never like been to like New York City and stayed, for instance, to save some money, maybe you stayed in Queens or you stayed in Brooklyn and you needed to get to like a Yankees game, or you were going over to Chelsea Market, like 40, 45 minutes in a city that size is not a big deal. And you're getting into the city. That is insane.
It's amazing. It really is. It's incredible. It was such a challenge, though, because it was like when we were there. So we stayed the whole trip on property at Disneyland Paris. So whenever we went into Paris itself, we did take the train in and back. But it was like, it was challenging to it was like, gosh, we want to do another day in Paris, but we want to do another day here in the park, because they're both great. Obviously, we spent a good bit of time in Paris itself. But what was really cool was, one day we just came back a little bit early. We finished up what we were planning to do in Paris that day. I think that might have been the day we went to the Louvre. And then, when we were done, the Louvre had closed. We came back and we just hopped on a ride at Disneyland Paris before we went back to our hotel. And it was just magical that that's right there. And I can't even imagine living, let alone living in Paris, because you're living in Paris. I mean, I had never been to Paris before, and it blew my mind. It's my new favorite city I've been to in the world. The value that they place on beauty and art and Like there's no such thing. I mean, I'm sure there is such a thing as an ugly building in Paris, but they're hard to find. I mean, every building you pass, everything is just so beautifully done. And even the bridges, it's just like every bridge, it can't just be a bridge, it has to be a work of art. There's a place that we can put busts of famous historical figures from France along the side of this bridge. So let's just do it. I mean, it's incredible. As much as I love the monorail and as much as I love being able to resort hop, I would much rather have a train that takes me to the heart of Paris.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. That comment changed my whole idea of what I want to do when we go, because we'd like to go back and forth too. And now hearing that, how convenient it is to go back and forth. If you stay on property, you can zip in and go to the art galleries. So thank you for that. That is actually very, very helpful. I appreciate it. So
I will say, I think when we go back, we probably will split our stay and do some. The only catch with that is the last train comes back to Disneyland Paris around 11:30 at night.
Okay.
And so we didn't really get to experience nightlife in Paris, which is unfortunate because we were afraid of missing the last train back. And if you need to take a cab back to Disneyland Paris, that is going to be a very expensive cab ride. So that is, I think when we go back, we will do at least a couple nights in the city proper just to be able to enjoy that. But otherwise, it's a lovely train ride too. I mean, you kind of see the French countryside, and then gradually you start to see the outskirts of the city, and it's very cool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
So, number 2 thing that Disney World does better, and I think this is probably not a huge surprise to a lot of folks, Disney World definitely does rides better in general than Disneyland Paris. I feel like there were certain attractions that kind of got an upgrade in some senses over the Disney World version. Like, for example, Big Thunder Mountain it's an island. The whole mountain is an island, which is cool. But I think the problem is, how when they make newer roller coasters, things just kind of get smoother and they don't feel as intense, and that definitely happened with Big Thunder. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed experiencing the new version of it there. But if I wanted to ride Big Thunder for fun, just for the feel of riding Big Thunder, I actually prefer ours. And then even their version of Rock and Roller Coaster, which they have turned into, that one's actually in the Walt Disney Studios park, but they've turned it into a Marvel's themed coaster. Yes, the Marvel theming is an upgrade over kind of the older graphics, that are there from here in our park, from the Aerosmith.
Well, anything's an upgrade over Aerosmith. I am not an Aerosmith fan.
But I gotta say, ours just feels a little bit more fun to ride, and I think that was kind of a theme, is that I felt like our thrill rides were a little bit more thrilling, and the other thing too is, like, many of our rides are the original. And even though the only exception I'll make to this is Small World, I fell in love with their Small World just because it's so beautiful inside, and they just really took it to the next level. And so there's a few here and there that I would say are better there. But even Haunted Mansion, their Phantom Manor, it's very cool. I love the backstory that they've added, and actually their backstory connects to the story of Big Thunder Mountain there. It all plays together, which is cool.
Right.
But if you said you can only ride one of these for the rest of your life, which one are you going to pick? I'm definitely going to pick the original Haunted Mansion. It's just, it's in my heart. It's the original,
What do you think about Pirates though? Because I've heard some rankings, and so we're about lists. Do you think that their Pirates is better or worse than Disney World?
I think, if I'm being objective and not taking, because I love our Pirates, because it's my Pirates, it's the one I ride all the time, I think theirs is better. It's more up to date, and the animatronics are better.
I've heard people rank it like Disneyland 1, as far as like
Yeah.
I mean, obviously probably the best is Shanghai, but like Disneyland, like they say that Paris took the best parts of both Disneyland and Disney World and kind of put them together.
Hmm.
Okay.
And that's
Okay.
Yep.
that's why they think that one's a little bit better than Disney World, but not as good as Disneyland. That's what I've heard. But
Agree.
so
I completely agree with that. Yeah, that, and in fact, I think Eric and I said that as after we wrote it. It was like, it's better. The one thing I showed in the video that I thought was really cool. There's actually a pirate who swings over your head
That
at
looked cool.
Disneyland
I was
Paris,
thinking
which
about that.
that is really cool. That was a cool
Yeah.
moment. And there's another moment that I don't remember seeing when we wrote it. I think maybe this animatronic was down, but I saw it on the behind the attraction. Apparently, there's an actual sword fight that happens between two animatronics.
yeah,
And I didn't have it in the video. And I went back, I was like, I don't remember this. And I searched my entire footage for it and I didn't see it. So I think maybe that animatronic was down, unfortunately, when we wrote it.
I believe that's off to the left as you're like coming through that particular scene, because I just watched another one after, because I had watched the behind the attraction, then I watched a couple ride throughs of that ride, and I think it is off to the left. But that's an amazing thing. But sometimes those things go down. Looking at you, Rise of the Resistance, who always goes down
Yeah.
with your animatronics. So
And it does, but you know what? Rise is a more impressive attraction,
Right.
just in terms of technical wizardry, than anything that we
Yeah.
rode at Disneyland Paris. So I think and same thing with Guardians at Epcot. If your goal is top of the line, next level attractions, I do think Disney World is probably your better bet.
Can I go back to Haunted Mansion a little bit?
Yeah.
So, and Nick's probably laughing. He knows how much I love Haunted Mansion here. So if you were to compare Florida's with Disneyland Paris, is the main difference just the ending being like the Western ending and the rest is kind of similar to the Florida version?
No, I mean there are some similarities. For example, the organist, at the beginning of the attraction, there are certain things that carry over, but there's a totally different story happening in Paris. It's this story of a bride who has lost her love, and
Right.
so that, like, when you first enter, you see the bride kind of weeping and mourning as you board the ride, and so from the very beginning, it's a different story.
Okay.
But I do think, for me, and I don't know if you feel the same way. You're a huge lover of this attraction.
Mm-hmm.
The Pepper's Ghost effect, is where you see the ghosts dancing.
Yep. And they're below you. Yeah.
Yeah, that I feel like, for me, that is my absolute favorite part of
Mm-hmm.
the attraction at Disney World.
Yeah.
And I was really excited to see what they were going to do with that. And I didn't feel like it was like really an upgrade. It just sort of felt like it was also there, but it was like, I'd rather be at the original, Well, I guess technically ours isn't the original, but they were built together, right? Yeah.
Let's end with this. Give me your 1, 2, 3. Obviously, you said that you prefer Florida over Disneyland Paris, but do you find the Disneyland Haunted Mansion better? Personally, I think the Florida one is better for a couple different reasons: length and the way it's organized. What is your opinion on that?
Can I tell you what is so sad? I have
Sure.
ridden the Disneyland one 3 times. All 3 times I've been there, it has been the overlay of Nightmare Before
Okay.
Christmas. I've never been able to see.
Okay.
In fact, we're going next year, and it's going to be in August, and I'm just like crossing my fingers. Please let them have they not started it yet when we get
Okay.
there?
We
'Cause
will
I've never
put a
seen
pin
it.
in it, and we'll
Yeah.
have you back on, and then we can talk Haunted Mansion.
Sounds good. What about you? What's your order? Well,
My order is
Mhm.
Florida first,
Okay.
and then Disneyland, and I haven't been to Paris yet, but Disneyland is good. I mean, it's very close. It's very similar. I realize it's the original, but I think I think it's a little longer. I think it flows better. I realize that Hatbox Ghost is part of Disneyland's, but now, if he's not there, is he there now?
He'll
No.
be there, I think,
Soon, right?
next month. I think
Okay.
it's the beginning of December.
Well, then it's going to be hard to argue that
Well,
Florida's going to be.
with Disney calendar, you know that means like February. So we have. It feels like we just started this list, but we're moving right along, which is great.
Yep.
And I'm learning a lot of cool stuff. So up next now, let's see. We know that Disney World does rides better, but now we're into the big hitter stuff. So
Yeah. What do you got here?
So my number one thing that Disneyland Paris does better, I feel like this might be kind of a cop out, but the the design, theming, scale, immersion, storytelling, all of that like just put together as one, the park itself, the feeling of each of the lands, they just had so much more land to work with. They had so much more money to work with because so what happened here, Eisner was looking at the success of Tokyo Disneyland had just happened, and with Tokyo Disneyland, the Imagineers were essentially given almost a blank check because the Oriental Land Company was like, we whatever it costs, we want the best Disney park, give us the best, and it was enormously successful. And so I think Eisner saw that and said, well, if we're going to do this, we got to do like they did there. We're going to spare no expense. And man, you can tell. Now, this is not the case next door at Walt Disney Studios because that was the second park when at that time Euro Disney was losing its shirt. It was not doing very well initially. So they pulled back. But on that first park, on Disneyland Paris, it's mind blowing. I mean, I when I look back at the footage, I was hoping I was going to be able to capture just how cool it is to walk into each of those lands and feel completely immersed. The best way I think to describe it, that feeling when you go into Pandora and you're just in a completely different world and you don't see a peak of any other world when you're there,
Yeah.
And they were able to pull that off with basically all of their lands there.
Wow.
And it really is, it's just the most beautiful park. And I think also too, the Imagineers were just paranoid because they knew that they were in this city filled with beautiful architecture and people were going to be like, well, why am I going to go to a theme park when I've got the real beautiful French countryside right there? And so they really felt the need to just turn everything up to 10, and they just did. It is stunning. And I can't wait to go back. Yeah.
So I've watched a few videos now, just because like I said, I went down that rabbit hole, and I noticed it right away, like that you could just tell that like I know where they're at. I know that this is the land they're at because it's completely blocked off, almost like each land has its own berm, like a Disneyland has. And so I think it's remarkable that they were able to pull that off. I wonder if with the massive expansion going on over there, I wonder if they will spare no expense in those parts, or if they have, like. I just wonder if it's going to be as remarkable.
I think that with the expansion that's happening in studios where they're adding that frozen land,
right?
I think it will be because it is a profitable park now. So now it is actually making a good return for Disney. So I think they have finally incentive to really put some money into it. And I think it's probably going to be on par with, if not better than, the frozen land that's opening right now in Tokyo would be my guess.
Huh.
But
yeah, I'm looking forward to when I can finally go to Paris. But I certainly have heard all of the things you're saying. I have heard before, maybe not in this order, but I've certainly heard that the theming and the immersion in the lands is unrivaled. So not really shocking to hear you say that. I forgot to ask this question earlier, and I want to ask it now. The Indiana Jones attraction. So some people said it looked like something you could get at your local Six Flags, because it really wasn't much theming.
It looks a little rickety.
Yeah, it is. I think it is kind of an off the shelf, one of those kind of roller coasters that you probably could find that's just been themed. I think what I liked about it was that quality of it. I don't know if you did. You guys happen to do well? You were there, Rob. Did you happen
Yeah.
to do Goofy's Sky School when you were
No,
at?
it was closed right before because we were there right when World of Color was happening, and they closed the rides around the perimeter, so we didn't get to do it. But I was actually going to say that the one that was in Dino Land. I'm trying to
Yeah,
remember. Oh,
yeah. Primeval World.
Primeval
Yeah.
World, Triceratops been
Yeah,
the other one. Reminds me of that.
Yeah, it's very herky jerky. It's very, rough to ride. And really the part that I think is I enjoyed it because it was just so surprising as someone who's never been on an inversion like that, but the inversion is so tight. It's so tiny that it's like you're seeing like your same train like at the other side of the inversion while you're doing it because
That's how
it's so
tight it
short
is?
and it's so quick. It is crazy tight, and it's a little like for me it was a little thrilling just because it was like wow, I've never felt an upside down moment like that. It was interesting. Eric was not a fan of that attraction at all. It definitely makes you, it's kind of like our Space Mountain. You kind of feel like you might need a visit to the chiropractor after you get off. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun because it was just an attraction. It's one of the few attractions that we don't have in either of our parks here. So that was always fun to get to experience something completely new.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail the conversation, but it just popped in my head that I remember that. But now we're
No,
on
all
to
this stuff is so interesting.
yeah. Now we're on to our grand finale, the number one thing that Disney World does better. I'm excited.
Oh, this is going to be so controversial. People are
Oh,
going to be
boy.
so mad to hear me say this.
We love controversy.
And I realize that like I'm associated, my videos are associated with teaching people how to use Genie. And Genie is definitely one of the most hated of the new things that have come to Disney World since the pandemic. But I got to tell you, when you experience their version of Genie Premier Access, you long for having Disney Genie back because their version of skipping the ride costs an outrageous fortune. If you want to do like all the attractions the way that Genie does, it was like, I want to say it was $175 a person per day. So, that was like, I think, after taxes and everything, it's like, I don't know, it's like $400 almost, for Eric and I to use it one day. Now, the plus side to theirs is it's sort of like Express Pass at Universal, where you just get in the line and go. But it wasn't, number one, it wasn't on many attractions compared to how many it's on, in our parks here. I would say in Disneyland Paris itself, maybe half the attractions, maybe a little bit more had it. So you're paying this fortune. You can't use it everywhere. Now you do have the option there of getting an a la carte. So any ride. It doesn't have to be an individual attraction, Lightning Lane, like it is at Disney World, where there's certain rides.
Oh, for
You can
anything.
pick any ride, and you can
Okay.
pay, whatever, it's like 10, 12, 15 euros, for that one ride if you wanted to. It's hard to justify doing that more than a few times, but it's also hard to justify spending that much money to do all of them. I
Yeah.
did not care for that at all.
I watched a video on Disneyland Paris's version of this, right? So because I was interested in it, and it also has dynamic pricing apparently, because the day
Yeah.
that this individual was there, it was 190 euros. That is
Yeah.
over $200, and it was like
Yeah.
18 euros for the individual ones. I was like, what is going on? Like, I don't know how I could possibly justify that. Now, granted, they bought it to see what it was like. They said the same as you did. Like, it's not even included with everything. And then when we get here, yeah, it's great because I literally do walk right on. But sometimes that means I'm missing the entire queue
Mhm.
that I really kind of want to see. It might be controversial, but I've said it before. I know a lot of people hate Genie Plus. I'm not one of them. I hate that I have to spend the money on it, but I'm going to do it
Yeah.
every time. Because the reality is, it's still cheaper than what Universal does. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people, a lot of, I don't know why it is, but it does seem universally, no pun intended, people people will tell you, oh, but Disney is so expensive, so we're going to go to Universal. If you're thinking about, if you want to skip the lines, if you want to use Express Pass, you're going to spend a lot more money on a day
Oh,
at
yeah.
Universal, unless of course if you stay at their version of deluxe hotels, you do get it included, which is nice. And I do think it would be smart of Disney to look at some kind of a model of including Genie with certain hotel stays or something, because I do think, but yeah, I mean, unless you're staying on property at Universal and just getting it for free, it's insanely expensive, especially for a large family.
Yeah, I think it's double your ticket price.
Yeah,
it's not cheap.
And that's that's the model it is in Paris. And I didn't care for it. I mean, I am with everybody else. I miss the old fast pass system. I miss the fact that it was just included for free and everybody was kind of on the same, well, not everybody was on the same playing field, because if you had a hotel reservation, you could book your rides way earlier than everybody else.
Yeah.
So there was that too.
Yeah.
But with Genie, at least, everybody gets the first crack at everything at 7 a.m. right now, so it does, in some ways, it does kind of level the playing field even more than FastPass did.
I think you're right. I don't know if this one's as controversial as you think, Rob. I think this makes sense.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think the idea of making Genie the number one thing that's better at Disney World than somewhere else, there's going to be a lot of people out there like, "Are you kidding me? Are you?"
Well, maybe because we
throwing
agree
something
with you.
at their podcast player.
So that does round out obviously the top 5 of each, but we usually do like an honorable mention, and maybe you did an honorable mention, but I kind of wanted to actually ask you about, just in general, your thoughts about the trip and whether or not, now at this point, what I had written down that I was going to ask you doesn't apply because you've already told me you're planning on going back, but I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts were about Paris in general and the trip in general.
Yeah, so I actually did have a couple of honorable mentions that I'll
Okay.
just quickly tick off.
Oh, that's fine.
There's one thing that I thought this is really cool that Disneyland Paris does. Anytime you get even quick service, if you get a Coke, it's going to come in a reusable plastic cup. Now you have to return it, but they give you dishes everywhere, real silverware everywhere, real plates. And so you don't feel nearly as wasteful as you sometimes do at Disney World, where everything is you're just throwing away plates and forks and cups. And so that was a really nice, cool thing that they do in Paris that I wish we could do here.
Our straws are paper, but let me give you 5 plastic forks.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I feel.
Right.
So.
Exactly. So, but the other thing that I wanted to mention, that I don't know why, there is this pervasive thing. I hear it in lots of videos. People say, oh, but the service is not great in Paris and the cast members are not as nice and it's not as magical. That was not our experience at all. I'm not saying that Disney World doesn't have amazing cast members. They do. I'm not saying that Disneyland Paris is better. I'm saying that they're both really good. And I felt like virtually every cast interaction we had was really wonderful, and we felt really warmly welcomed there. And I was really nervous. I felt like we speak some French, but not enough to do more than anything like rudimentary, like placing an order or something or asking where something is. And I was really self-conscious and nervous about that. And everyone at Disneyland Paris just immediately started speaking to you in English when they could tell that, you were not a native French speaker. And it was a very good experience, and we felt very welcomed and very much like it was a great Disney experience there.
I think that's an experience that more Americans need to have when, is to be in a country where you are not speaking their native language, or they don't speak your language, because I think that, not, I don't want to get on a high horse, but I think that unfortunately a lot of people aren't as tolerant of those who do feel uncomfortable because they're trying their best to speak in your language. And so, I think it's remarkable that you can recognize that, you were uncomfortable and that they could recognize it and then switch over to English. How many American cast
Mhm.
members could switch to French if they needed to? I mean, that's just putting it out there. And I think it's important to remember that the world is a big place. So I don't want to get on a high horse, but I just think that that's a important experience for people to have.
100%. And then we did try really hard to start every interaction
Oh, of
as best
course.
as we
Yeah.
could in French, just because, we were trying to be, we're in France, we
Hmm.
should be speaking French. Everyone here is speaking French. So we
Right.
tried, but we just didn't have the language skills to be able to get very far. And I was really grateful to the cast members there.
That's
And
great.
one other thing I wanted to give an honorable mention to Disneyland Paris for: walkthrough attractions. I I feel like here we don't have many of them. The new Moana one is very cool, but for the most part, the walkthrough attractions that we have here, other than the animal trails, because that's kind of a different thing. The animal trails are incredible at Animal Kingdom, but in general, it's just not something that people love as much here in the States. And in the parks in Paris, especially there's like a labyrinth that's themed to Alice in Wonderland, and they really invested in these walkthrough attractions, and they're lovely, they're very nice, and they definitely added something extra to the park that I thought was kind of cool and worth mentioning.
I think that goes back to the consumerism piece that you were talking about earlier with merchandise too. It's a different demographic, and I
Yeah.
love me a good walkthrough attraction personally, but I do understand people are like, you use all that real estate for Moana, you could have built me another roller coaster, and I'm all
Yeah.
about I'm all about the walkthroughs, but that's me.
I thought they
Yeah.
were cool, especially the Alice one. I noticed there were a couple things that they recycled from the ride that was in Disneyland, but I don't think that's a big deal. I mean, essentially, Pinocchio is the same ride, and um, Peter Pan, for the most part, seems like it was the same ride. But I kind of like that it was sort of reinvented, even though it was the same Queen of Hearts. Did you feel the same way? You kind of like the reinvention or the remix of the attraction?
So I did remember the when I rode the Alice in Wonderland ride that's in Disneyland, and if you asked me if I could do either that ride again or go through the walkthrough attraction, hands down the walkthrough attraction, because it was a real labyrinth. I mean, it was like a maze. It was You were an active participant in the journey, as opposed to just kind of seeing it unfold in front of you. And I thought that was a very cool way of. You're right. A lot of it is recycled from that attraction, but it really is a lot cooler. And it also took up a huge amount of real estate. I mean, you want to talk about Moana taking up real estate that could have been a coaster. This thing could have been probably two attractions. It's
Wow.
enormous, but it was very cool. In terms of what you were saying before about just doing a trip to Disneyland Paris and Paris in general, and the city of what's challenging about it is they're both great, and there's no way that you can fit everything in that you want to do at either one, but
Hmm.
obviously it's a lot easier to fit everything in at Disneyland Paris than it is Paris itself. So it is definitely, I think, a challenge to figure out how to, because we only have so much time for vacation, right? We can't spend a month, or maybe some people can, but if you could spend a month there, great. But if you can't, it's going to be hard
Right.
to really experience. I mean, the Louvre. I knew the Louvre was big.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, it's like a maze.
Yeah, it is. It's exponentially larger than you had imagined it could be, and
Yeah.
you could spend, I think, a week in the Louvre alone if you really
Yeah.
wanted to. I mean, and probably not see everything. So
Hmm.
that's the challenge of it, is figuring out the balance, how much time to spend in Paris and how much time to spend at Disneyland Paris. And I think if we were to go back, I would probably budget, a couple days in Disneyland Paris, at least a day in Walt Disney Studios, and maybe kind of a relaxed day. So maybe like 3 or 4 days at the parks, and probably the rest we would probably do Paris proper, just because it's. I mean, there's just an immeasurable amount of things to do there.
Well, that answered that question. I had that question too of, how would you recommend in the future, or how would you build upon what you did?
Yeah, I would say, for us too, because we were making a video, we had to spend more time, than you would if you were just, exploring the park. But yeah, I think 2 days, 2 to 3, you'd be good with the main park, and really, as it stands right now, Walt Disney Studios, you can easily do that one, I think, in a day.
Speaking for all of your viewers, because I'm gonna speak for them. You have our permission to take a vacation and not have to worry about shooting a video. So you don't have to worry about that. As I can only because I know that
Yep.
you had said how stressful it was to get there because there was an issue with your flight, and then you would have had no equipment.
Oh my gosh.
Because I remember seeing that on your story or something when you were flying over there.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a hot mess. I will. That's another thing that I learned. Either fly nonstop or plan for a really long layover, because if you miss your connection, there's not usually another flight they can get you on until the next day to get to Paris. So
Right.
that was a challenge for sure. I did not enjoy sleeping in the airport. That was not super fun.
I'll bet. I just wanted to thank you again. I know Rob and I both love chatting with you. Every time we've gotten to talk, it's been a joy. We love your content. I'm excited that you were able to make time to come and talk to us about this. It is something our listeners are going to enjoy, but also, we know that you're a busy man, and so we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I love being here. It was great doing this last show. I really enjoyed being here today, and I'm a big fan. I love listening to the podcast. I do. Whenever I'm not getting my steps in at the park, I'm always getting my steps in walking around my neighborhood, and I got my earbuds in, and I'm listening to the Diz List when I'm out. So I appreciate you guys putting out the great content that you do as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you let all of our listeners know where they can find you and follow you? Give us all the channels, all the things.
Sure. So really, the main thing is YouTube. Everything else, we kind of put out things on Facebook and Instagram, but it's Ear Scouts, at Ear Scouts everywhere. But mainly, it's YouTube is the bulk of what we do. And we really just try to. Our goal is always to try to get at least a video out every week, and we look forward to seeing everybody over there. And also, you can see us at earscouts.com now. We got a forum there, so you can come say hello on the forum as well.
And we're there. I love that. I love the fact I'm a sucker for a good forum, so I like that because I do feel it's a little bit easier than getting into comment sections on YouTube or whatever. So I totally think that was a really cool move to make. But like I said, we really appreciate you being here. We couldn't have asked for a better time, and it's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, and tomorrow is just a list away.
Tune in next time, and we'll see you real soon.